What do you get when you combine Lord of the Rings, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Willow, Conan the Destroyer, Avatar, and Superman Returns, and then make a really crappy movie out of it? You get Snow White and the Huntsman. Really crappy might be too strong. It's entertaining. It definitely has a mild entertainment value to it. But I just recently saw Snow White and the Huntsman with our other co-host here from Film and Focus, with Jason, and with Jason's co-host on Flicks, Dan. We all went out and saw it together, and producer Aaron went with us, and we went and saw this film over the weekend. And I had a really hard time with it, personally. And I wanted to share a little bit about why. I feel like this was a movie that was trying to be, at one point, this sort of action film that sort of intermingled a love story, that also then, at the same time, tried to be this visionary fantasy. And it didn't really pull off any of it, because it was trying to do so many of those different types of genre exercises all at once. The love story never really got fleshed out. I never really believed that anybody was in love with anybody else. You weren't even really sure who was supposed to be in love with who for most of the movie. The action was sort of subpar. The fantasy elements had moments and flashes of brilliance, but just as many moments that just fell completely flat. One moment the special effects would be really awe-inspiring and excellent, and the next moment it would look kind of hokey and fake. The dialogue was completely bland, cliche, and uninteresting to me. The acting, for the most part, was really poor, although I really like Chris Hemsworth and a lot of the work he's been doing lately, because he's just kind of fun to watch on screen. But he's more fun to watch in the way that Sam Worthington's fun to watch. He's fun to watch, but not because he's necessarily a really great actor, but just because there's a charisma about him that I really enjoy. But for the most part, I feel like even Charlize Theron, who's usually a great actress, had a lot of bad moments in this movie. I've never been a big fan of Kristen Stewart, and I don't buy that Kristen Stewart is ever the fairer maiden in the land over Charlize Theron. Not for a minute. Even when Charlize Theron's old and craggy and her skin's falling apart, she's still prettier. So I never really bought any of that either. There's just a lot about the movie I could never really buy into. And I feel like a lot of it was that the story was scattered. It sort of felt like this fragmented, broken story that they were trying to pull in all these various elements. And it was just really difficult for me to get through and buy it and believe it all the way through. Now, obviously, the title is Snow White and the Huntsman, not Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. The Seven Dwarves are present in the film, and they have somewhat of a major role, but they definitely take a back seat to the trifecta of the major characters of this movie, which are Snow White, the Huntsman, and the Queen. And they're really those three characters are the focus of this movie. But again, that's even part of the problem, is because I'm not really even sure exactly which one mattered the most at most points in the film. A lot of the things they tried to perpetuate about Snow White and her story arc never really came to fruition. They never really explored most of it. They just kind of tried to tell it to you and make you believe it, even though they never really produced that as part of the flow of the story that you were watching. I just feel like the whole thing was just really problematic. And at the same time, again, I'll admit, I was kind of entertained, hoping it would catch up to itself, hoping it would improve, or that it would all get wrapped up in the end. And even by the end, when that never really happened, I still walked out thinking, okay, it wasn't a total waste of time. I didn't hate the movie, but I just feel like there were so many things they tried to do. They tried to do too much at once. None of it really worked when it came together as a complete package. Here's a final note on that. Here's what's interesting. When the trailers came out, everyone looked at Snow White and the Huntsman and said, that's going to be good. And then Mirror's trailers came out, which was the other Snow White movie that came out this year, 2012. And everyone looked at that trailer and said, that's going to look terrible. That's going to be awful. It's going to be a train wreck. And neither one of them have been reviewed really super well. But Mirror has been reviewed better than Snow White and the Huntsman, which I think is shocking and surprising everyone, including myself. I didn't even go watch Mirror because it wasn't reviewed well. Well, Snow White and the Huntsman's being reviewed even less so than Mirror was, and I'm going to jump into the chorus of people that didn't really care for it that much. I give Snow White and the Huntsman 1.5 out of 5 stars.